Samma Sambuddham Saranam Gacchami. Sri Saddhammam Saranam Gacchami. Aryamaha Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhyami. Chakkum udapaditva, Jnanam udapaditva, Panya udapaditva, Nitya udapaditva, Aloko udapaditva, Sadhu.
Friends, Dr. Basil Silva here, she is here with us today, and he was here with us for many talks even before, and his talks have been very interesting because he was giving us a new opening into new subjects, and today also he had taken up a subject which is going to be very interesting because this way Four Noble Truths were not discussed before, and it is insight into Four Noble Truths. So insight into Four Noble Truths means not just talking about Four Noble Truths, but we are going to go deep and see what Noble Truth has meant for us.
Dr. Gopala, Travel, and friends of Dhamma, I have been asked to talk to you today on the subject of Four Noble Truths and insight into Four Noble Truths. So I am glad to do my best to talk about it. Actually, Four Noble Truths was outlined to the 5 disciples with whom Prince Siddhartha Gautama was meditating and working together in search of enlightenment. At that time in India, there were various teachers and philosophers, spiritualists, practicing all types of things in search of the truth. They had already understood what dukkha was, what samsara is, what existence means, and they were very hardly working towards a solution for emancipation. In fact, the Indian background was such that for the last, prior to Buddha's arrival, for about 6,000 to 7,000 years back, there had various upliftments in metaphysical insight. Vedic system was there, they had done a lot of work, then Upanishads, after that Brahmanism, and they had all believed in life after death and existence. But they also understood that we are going through hardship, suffering. So they were going in various directions in search of a way out. The greatest leader just before Lord Buddha was Niganta Gautamaputta, or Jaina Mahavira. Jaina was a religion, virtual religion that was practiced very largely, but it is being practiced even today. We went to India some time back on a pilgrimage. We found Jaina temples and Jaina bhikkhus. But they were talking in terms of a moksha, or to be with Mahabrahma, and that was not the end. But after the arrival of Lord Buddha, after he got enlightened, he came out with this theory that you cannot cling on to anything to emancipate. Even if you think of moksha, that means you are thinking of something. And you will be there as long as you have merit, and then after the merits are exhausted, you will come down. Lord Buddha's thinking was, Nibbana is something that you realize after giving up everything. Even having said goodbye to Lord Buddha, this will have to give up everything and have nothing in their mind, and that is a state of emptiness which he came out with. He said the path to this is the eightfold path, having understood the Four Noble Truths. Also, Saturday he said, friends, avoid the two extremes and follow the middle path. At that time, there were those who were practicing going to the extreme. There was one camp thinking who have accepted the indulgence in sensual pleasures and they said this is the end of it, we don't live after this, so why not we make the best of it. And Lord Buddha described it as sensual pleasures which is low, vulgar, the way of worldling, ignoble, unbeneficial. And on the other side, there were those who are going through hardships, difficulties in order to pay penance and get over the pains, bad karma that they have accumulated from the past. So he could call this group those who are undergoing self-mortification. And he mentioned that self-mortification itself is painful, ignoble, unbeneficial. Without veering either here or there to the extremes, the Tathagata has awakened to the middle way, which gave rise to vision and gave rise to knowledge and enlightenment. He said, we must follow the middle path. That is the foundation on which he developed his philosophy and thinking. Now, before I talk about the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, let me simply explain what dukkha means. Dukkha is a state of suffering, pain, discomfort, and not getting what you want, felt in the mind. So mind acts in conjunction with the external world. So whatever you want, whatever you desire, whatever you aspire for, has to come from outside. So dukkha arises on account of the union of you and the external world. And to get what you want, here comes, you should have good comfort, good pleasure, wholesome pleasure, and a pure mind which cannot twist on to that side or this side, which will not go after lust or hate. So, an impartial, undisturbed mind is the one that can go through this existence without getting caught to suffering. Now, for instance, and what is happiness? Happiness is not something that comes direct. Happiness is a state of mind that you get after you move away from a difficult situation. And in order to maintain that state of happiness, you still have to work hard to prevent dukkha arising. Now take a good example. A child, a baby is born. The baby comes crying for food and heat, protection and heat of the mother. So, life arrives with a requirement of maintaining life and existence. So the two together comes up. So a life is innocent, but in trying to procure its survival, its needs, he gets into difficulty. Supposing if the mother has no milk, or if they have no money to get the necessary food for the child gets into difficulty. So the dukkha arises. And even by birth, it is feeling in a state of dukkha, requiring food and sustenance and protection from the mother. And as we grow all the time, we have to sustain ourselves, we have to protect ourselves, we have to look after ourselves, we have to maintain ourselves, food, clothing and shelter. Not only that. Now see, life comes up probably with a willingness or your intention. Some form of life, because every life thinks of another life or passes on to another life in samsara. So always life, we can put the blame because you want to live. But then Mother Nature gives life with an undertaking that you must maintain life, preserve life and proliferate. It is at the moment of proliferate and maintaining your life that the dukkha multiplies. And what happens in the case of proliferation? Sensual pleasures, sense faculties begin to work hard and they want all these things, all the comforts and pleasures. And that energy that pushes you to require is emotion. And where is emotion coming from? By nature, this is a part of Chitta Niyama, which are the fixed laws of nature. There are several fixed laws of nature: Chitta Niyama, Dhamma Niyama, Kamma Niyama, Rittu Niyama.
Bija Niyama, laws of germination.
That means fixed manner in which the mind functions, fixed manner in which the thinking, the closure, change, accumulates and operates, the fixed laws how the natural phenomena operates, and the fixed laws how the weather conditions
and germination
operate. So those are conditions upon which we have to work. Our mentality has to operate. So if these two are not in harmony, there is dukkha. So life springs up with dukkha. Another thing that we have to mention is that when we are suffering, when we are going through samsara, who feels it? Ourselves in the mind. So our ego is disturbed. And as a result of it, we bear the brunt and say, oh, this is all my fault, my dukkha, my bad behavior, my accumulation of bad karma. I am going to explain to you at the end that you are not to be blamed wholly. You are inflicting only very little. And the rest of it is external world and
ignorance or avidya and
natural world. So we have to get this clear. So this means when you know the mechanism how change gets hold of you, you can get yourself relieved to some extent. You know, the Indian background was so rich that they had understood most of this existence, and before Lord Buddha, there was this teacher called Jaina Mahavira. He had laid down a code of conduct for the people, for Rasa, and that was divided into Maharasa and Anurasa. Maharasa was the clergy and Anurasa was for the normal profession. And what were the 5 precepts that they had to obey? Not to kill, not to lie, not to steal, not to have sexual intercourse, and not to have property. That is for the clergy. But for the ordinary, it was relaxed to a certain extent. So, you see, they had understood that proliferation of life, bringing more people on here, increases suffering. So they had at the back of mind not to get involved, not to prolong, not to produce products in samsara. That was why they said restraint from sexual intercourse. Sexual from owning property. Owning property means your desire to possess things, have more complex, more possession, your bondages, your binding, your attachment to existence get strengthened. Now, about the most important area in dukkha or suffering is the change. How do change arise? Change that later. Generally a misunderstanding of some activity. Now say for instance, you see something outside and that seeing has not been caused by you as such. Your sense that your eyes see. When the eyes come in contact with the external object, an impression is made in the mind at the subconscious level. When this is recognized at the subconscious level with the available data in the mind, and then thereafter it comes back saying, you have seen this. Up to that time, it is a work of nature, chitta niyama, that operates getting hold of objects. Then only it comes up to your conscious mind and say, you have seen this. Then you say you like it or not. And that liking it or not is laksa. That is partly caused by you. Because if you like it, alright, you want it. If you don't like it, still you put away. Why did you like it or not? No, the fact that you like it or not makes it that you have to enjoy it or tolerate it, and which means existence in samsara. But later, existence in samsara, this is also by a simple act of your liking it. Why did you like it in the first place? Why did you dislike it? This arises from the first command that you receive to need to sustain yourself, maintain yourself and proliferate. So that came to you from where? Mother Nature. So just because you liked it and you go to the depth of it, you are not 100% at fault. It's ignorance. You have been ignorant of your behavior to a certain extent. Now, therefore, that part of the operation is slightly contributed by you, but the rest external factors, conditions. Now, another thing is, once how is it that, I can know when you like that object, you liked it or didn't like it. How does that part develop? Liking or not liking? It again stems up from the need. You needed it, you needed something, then after that you started sophisticating the need. I need, this is better, that is not good. And there are so many things which I have a choice, I want to choose from this. It is at that time that differentiation arises, and then your dislike for certain things begins. Partially you are responsible because you manipulated this. And how did you manipulate this? You are lacking in aware mindfulness and wisdom to discriminate what you are confronted with. Now there are so many factors going into it. You are partially ignorantly liking. Then you didn't have the mindfulness to discriminate and know what it is. And therefore, you got into the trap of liking it, not knowing the consequences that will arise in future. Now what happens is, in the process of our evolution, in the process of our living existence, we first act on impulse. And by intuition, impulse and instinct. First you, now see that comes like this. To come to this level of existence, this level of civilized living, we have gone through enormous existences in various stages in samsara. We would have been animals, we could have been insects, we could have been devas, we could have been in the hell, we could have been yakas, we could have been brahmans, and most of it could have been at lower level because we are supposed to, this human form is supposed to be a higher level of existence. So, in those livings, in behavior in those areas, those stages, are filled with you inside deeply buried in your subconscious mind. Now that is why suddenly when you see something, you react for those conditions. So we are carrying in ourselves, in how do we behave in long time back in samsara. Our abilities, our know-how, our knowledge, our capabilities all are accumulated, and they can be collected through the subconscious mind, and they arise. When the moment comes, they manifest. And the way they manifest is sort of is a process where your lower level areas of the mind and plus the energies of the behavior of those stages are still in the universe. So when you light a matchstick, it lights up with the oxygen around the atmosphere. Similarly, when your mind comes in contact with certain object which is alien to you, suddenly it is helped to be recognized by vijnana, consciousness. And consciousness is partly within you, and it has the possibility to access the energy of those similar operations that we have done in the past. So that is a very sort of complex way how it happens. And this is how klesha manifests. You do something wrong, where you are guilty or you feel unhappy about it, then the pains arise. These pains are there until another incident comes where they can contribute, come in and help. Now, to talk about this, shall we take one or two examples? Say you are driving a car, and suddenly a lizard jumps onto the road and the car runs over it and you drive away. You did not see the incident and you went off comfortably. So you have killed and killed the lizard, you didn't know about it, so therefore you have no guilt, no klesha, no pains arise. But later on, when you stop the car, somebody who was in the back seat tells you that you ran over a lizard and that poor fellow passed away, jangled and died. Then when you think of it, your mind goes back and you feel sorry. So what you have let go, you picked up and accumulate a conscience, guilty conscience. So this is a delicate process of, it is your mind which you have to look after. How to look after the mind. Now before that, shall we go to one or two other things? Now, I can give you one or two instances where most of what we have done in Sansara comes along with you, and they prompting and they sort of at any incident, whatever you want, whatever that comes into your mind, always it is supported or distracted by other energies or other forces coming to you. So if you are doing a research work, then whatever energies of research work done by you before, and also what others have done and left for you, will come in. And this is how discoveries and various things are reached and aroused by people. What come to mind also. And it is the manipulation of the mind in the proper way that we can guard ourselves and develop ourselves. The first factor is being mindful. Being mindful means everything that comes into your mind, if you can just know that it has come and then reflect and think about it, discriminate it and take a decision wisely, then you are safe. Otherwise, the change will arise. Also, now when you go to the Dhammacakkappa Sutta once again, and come on and I will tell you what he says about in the Sutta. He says, these two extremes should not be followed by one who has gone forth into homelessness. What he means by homelessness is one who has gone in search of the truth for his emancipation. What to? The pursuit of sensual pleasures, pursuit of sensual happiness in sensual pleasures, which is low, vulgar, way of the worldly, ignorant and unbelievable. And the pursuit of self-mortification, which is painful, ignorant and beneficial. Without really either of these extremes, the Tathagatas awaken to the middle way, which gives rise to vision, which gives rise to knowledge, wisdom and enlightenment. Then he goes on to say, which gives rise to vision, which gives leads to Nibbana. He said, it is the noble eightfold path. That is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This bhikkhu is the middle way awakened by the Tathagata, which gives rise to vision, which gives rise to knowledge, which leads to wisdom and peace, to direct knowledge and to enlightenment, to Nibbana. He said in his own language, Chakkhum Udapadi, Jnana Udapadi, Panya Udapadi, Vidya Udapadi, Aloka Udapadi. Now he says, goes on to say, the noble truth of suffering. He says, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering, union with what is displeasing is suffering, separation from what is pleasing is suffering, not to get what one wants is suffering. In brief, by aggregate subjected to clinging are suffering. Then he talks of the original suffering. The original suffering it is this craving which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust. Seeking delight here, there, that is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for examination. Now, this bhikkhu is the noble truth of cessation of suffering. It is the remembrance fading away of cessation of that same craving, which being craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom of it, from it is non-reliance of it, leads to Nibbana. Now, he said, even birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering, union with what is displeasing is suffering, separation from what is pleasing is suffering, not to get what wants is suffering. In brief, 5 aggregates subjected to clinging is suffering. Now 5 aggregates means our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and so these are gifted by nature to for your existence, and in it are these 5 agents who help you to get what you want. But what happens is, once you have eaten a food, or you have got something, you enjoyed something, or you have gone through hardships, memories of these are remembered in your mind. And these memories are the things that help you in the long run and also causes you to get more and more of those what you want and get rid of more and more what you don't. Because you have registered a liking or a disliking to what you have gone through. And this gives rise to tales, and this gives rise to your binding existence in samsara. Now, Lord Buddha and other sutras have explained that if you look at the reasoning and how this was caused, what components you have put in as your part to fill up a huge molehill of suffering or enjoyment, this is mostly a product of various components. And it is understood that yielding into this is never ending. Now take for instance a good example, our progress. We have been at the human being has been at the most rudimentary level of aborigines, Vedas, and they are very difficult conditions where you have to eat out a living. So, in order to come out of that state, we have worked harder to find a better state of living enjoyment. So, what is the moving force behind it? Dukkha. Then now today, we are supposed to be very civilized, advanced in our technology and science, medicine and various other things, and we are at the top of it, even gone to the stage of conquest of space. But why it is all this? We are moving in search of a better state to move away from states of difficulty. We are in search of comfort. But where will this comfort end up? And we are on a footing of fear of losing what we are accumulating. But what happens is this journey will not go on like this forever. Because if what you are looking for is available in abundance, the nature and the external world producer brings to you indefinitely, no problem. But what happens is, what you need becomes scarce. And those who need the life, living entities multiply. So therefore, in what you want, there will be competition. Competition leads to conflict. conflict leads to wars. Wars lead to destruction and ultimately the end of the world. Now look at the world today. Last December, many people thought that in fact they took action, preventive action also, that part of the world will be destroyed, starting from America. It has not happened, but it could happen. And now the powerful nations are trying to dominate and keep the lower nations down by all kinds of gimmicks and hoodwinking them and giving bait to misdirect them, so that they can stay in power, leaving these forces down. But the forces that are kept down will not keep quiet. They are working very hard towards rising up and want to confront and so the lower one want to get into the state of being better. So conflicts are bound to it. This warfare arises firstly was mental, chitta sankara. You put into the atmosphere all sorts of hate, disgust and curses, and they are there as energies waiting to manifest. Then whenever the conditions are powerful, and when there are more and more disgusted, dissatisfied people, those energies that are there to destroy, to make destruction, cause harm, anarchy, will help them to do that. If you look back in history, you will see powerful nations have come up, they have ruled the world, but they have gone several times. Okay? The Vikings, the Dutch, the Portuguese,
Spanish and
the English, and now there's a different formula of trying to, is a different kind of suppression that is going on. Having understood that fighting with weapons is not that influential, but getting control of the mind is the force that they are using now. Brainwashing
and various other strategies to get hold of the key people.
Avidya I spoke to you about, and there are certain things that that make us operate our conditions. Lord Buddha says there is impermanence, nonsense, anicca, dukkha. Dukkha now I have gone through. Impermanence, changing of phenomena is a natural thing. It is not, whatever you do, however much you say this is mine, this is yours, I will hang on to this, they are changing. However much I want to keep my ideologies, they are subject to change because of the natural law. Anatta. And also, everything that is alive, has life, arise, continue for a while and cease. So this is a universal law. And beneath that is the very basic universal law is attraction and repulsion. All the universe, everything that happens with these two forces at the bottom of it. Arising and ceasing is a product of attraction and repulsion. And when attraction, arising and ceasing, when something arises, that does not mean that energy of arising is 100% there. But the ceasing is also there. Now when we are living beings, we get life, at the same time we get two components. The growth of the life and the decay of the life. These two energies are there, but the growth of the life is more powerful. So it goes on. And at the time that the growth and decay are in balance, then you maintain an even pace. But when the growth energy becomes weaker and the decaying energy becomes powerful, then you begin to go down and pass it. I think my time is up. We will go for question time. Yes.
The presentation now open for discussion.
Yeah.
My comment
Yes.
will be on your
Yes.
which is the question I'm going to ask.
Right.
In our day-to-day life, should we attempt to achieve happiness?
Yes. It is a duty on you to look after yourself. It is a duty on you as far as possible to not to get involved in suffering. So in this you have to be happy. It is only if you are happy and contented and able to take your mind to function to help you to get rid of your difficulties and go where you want to go.
I think you understood my question.
Correct?
My question is, in our day-to-day life, should we make an attempt to be happy?
Now happiness is a state of mind. If you can live without discriminating very much, appreciating whatever that comes to you, and if difficulties arise, let them pass by, not reacting. In other words, if you can bring yourself to a state of equanimous living, then you don't suffer, and at the same time, you don't jump up in enjoyment of happiness. That also becomes slightly toned down.
Now, what I believe
Yes.
is that in your day-to-day life, you should not walk as a law of any difference to achieve
Right?
if you want to achieve happiness and you do not achieve it, then
Correct.
if you do achieve happiness, your sleep because your body, that will lose happiness because you do not feel.
Absolutely.
And happiness is happiness. If you lose it, you are sad. In other words, in this sector, without happiness, there is a middle seat for permanent sorrow. So what should you try to attempt to achieve contentment? Now, natural contentment. What is contentment? Contentment is to be satisfied with whatever you have. So, one example was thought. You go for lunch and you find some very rich food. Yeah. You go for dinner and you find a piece of bread. Content that is not good. In a time, I am going to be sad. No, you are content that is not good. Try to achieve contentment, not happiness.
Now, I think you have got the answer very well, and you have understood the Four Noble Truths very well, and I think you are very much high up on the way on your path of evolution. But what I am saying is, if you can keep your mind on an equanimous state and live in the present moment, if some fleeting food comes, you enjoy it, have it, but don't carry it in your pocket. Don't keep thinking about it and let it go. In the same manner, if you have to face difficulties, you have to starve on eating, just you are starved and let it go on. Don't worry about it. It is this repetitive thinking in the mind that causes the change. So the best thing is what Buddha said, meditation. Meditation means basically being mindful of objects that come to your mind, keeping your concentration on a certain object unbroken, and not allow extraneous matter to interrupt and sort of reorient you. When you do this, keep on doing this, now you have the intention of being contented, not to be disturbed by this side or the other, and to go on your path. So when you keep on meditating on a certain point, all the mental energy that you have concentrates on the process of meditation
and gives you insight.
And builds up so much of energy you rightly want to do. What is within the Eightfold Path? Right thinking, right aspiration, right mind, right living. So, in the process of meditation, you develop so much of power that give you the strength, virya, to dispel. Now, your mind will always be sort of going here and there. If you see a nice plate of food, you will say, right, am I to take it or am I not to take it? It is dukkha, it is not dukkha. If I don't get it, so in an equanimous state of mind, these proliferations of external ideas will be very little or nothing. So your feeling, working of the mind will be very free to do what you actually, all these arises, all these external thoughts thinking arise because of you have some time or the other attached to them, like them or dislike them. So when you are in the equanimous state of mind, the like and dislike become weaker. And your objective, if you make resolutions in meditation, I will be equanimous. I will not bend this way and that way. I will be absolutely free in mind. These energies will help you to come there.
I would like to add something to the discussion of the very question. Now, let us start with the happiness that how about we are saying everywhere, but we don't find it. So we keep on saying that for interpretation, but even that fails to make it happy. So we have to go to half of happiness and understand that there are two definitions of happiness. One is the worldly happiness of all years. How we get based on that, based on the five senses. This is something that is like the five senses, this is something that is like this is something that is like heart or spirit. So based on the five senses, we have learned that is not one way and the key. How we do that to that is to be happy. That is what the real happiness. So that really good is not that happiness, that's not real. That's what it is actually become unreal. What is real happiness is not future, it's not permanent. Not happiness is stupid. And it has no quality, it has no substance. It's unreal. So just one day we learn to go into happiness, we never have happiness, it's stupid. So that's why that without the renunciation, when you realize that what you call financially there is nothing last in there. There is nothing that happy sugar. There is nothing that substantial there in character. When you realize that, this is discovery. It's a powerful theory. So the happiness is not happiness. It is redefined. When you understand that, when you keep on making good, those beautiful sights, we realize because it's foolish. So, how is whatever we do? So, then we think for the one day, that we are still from our day, is the supply the sugar, and also the new sugar. So, I think the definition of concept was the talking about. Even the other day, what are actually something? We are actually questioning the answer of power or present power. And the present power will be the actually question, thinking like the power of the dunya. But all of those are based on illusion, based on marketing, identification. So that's what we understand that Buddha market, that all of these marketing and marketing, they are here, they are not, basically, otherwise. example of present knowledge and non-concern. As far as I am concerned, the person who tries to be content, there is nothing called present knowledge and unpresent knowledge. There is knowledge. In other words, our minds do not have a liking for anything. No liking for anything at all, not for your neighbor of your family, not for your anything, nothing. No dislike or like. You are just moving like because absolutely
as a sense of duty, what you are cast upon to do. Now, very interesting contributions made. I can just tell you a little bit. Now, happiness, you are looking for material things. But you can transfer this happiness, as you pointed out, in search of non-happiness. So when you wrestle through giving up happiness in search of something not non-happiness, then you are happy doing that. This is what happens in meditation. You start meditating, and when you are getting to samadhi, and when you can attain a state, say, jhana, you are happy because you have attained something you wanted away from material happiness. So, Triviti Sukha Ekagata at the height of meditation level, and then that is also happiness. But ultimately, when you, with that sort of happiness of having given up everything, when you come to the doorstep of the real happiness, you have to leave that happiness also and just go empty.
And as you know, all of us have been aimed at the communication of the mass. Suffering, the cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and path leading to the cessation of suffering. Now, I would like to draw your attention to second cause of suffering. Now, according to Dhammacakkaya Pavattana, for all sorts of suffering, the cause is tanha. Now, there are three main defilements. Three, hatred, ignorance, love, dvesha, moha. Now, there are three. Now, on one hand, Nibbana has been defined as eradication of these three main defilements.
Right.
Now, in Dhammacakkaya Pavattana, Buddha has told only the praise for tanha as the main cause for the dukkha. Now, why is he mentioning about hatred and ignorance?
Why didn't he mention?
Yes, he has mentioned only the tanha.
Now, he was not talking to you, Lord Buddha. He was talking to his colleagues who were almost at his level. So he need not go into such details. Moment he said this, they got it. So there were some Brahmins who went to Lord Buddha and spoke to him, and in one or two words, then got enlightened. So, but in other areas of his teaching, he talks of these three. So we are very fortunate that what Lord Buddha spoke for
45 years, we can go through them right now.
in one day, one sitting. So we are gifted with all that. So we are in probably a better state than the time of Lord Buddha in learning Dhamma. And why, with all this?
Now, we are talking about happiness. I think before we start reading happiness, we have to know the understanding what we believe. I think basically what we are made to understand our suffering is most of it physical, and the other is materials. And from an idealist point of view, we have to understand what suffering is. We can do dimension as what happiness. And I think most people see that when they start talking about happiness, I think it's mostly materials. But I think we already studied something more Indian. So, I have done the minimum Buddhism, but still they have not been able to grasp what do trees all the world. And I think, like most philosophy, when you start talking about words, it must be very clear as to what we are dealing. And I thought that we found something more. When you mentioned about the like Sattva, Satya, I expect to be very warm and
Right, thank you. I was trying to tell you to sort of relieve you from the belief that I am the contributor for dukkha. I was trying to gradually take you away from the feeling of guilt that it is not my fault. My input is very little, the rest of the input is outside. And finally, when you come to the bottom of it and understand cause and effect, you can relieve yourself entirely with the full understanding of nonsense. Everything is caused by cause and effect. It is very, very difficult for us to get to that point.
Yes, it's just that, it's a basic term, the answer is something more than, that's something to do with the science, as he mentioned, one thing, then what happened because of the purpose, because of things in the class, and because of this, how it's suffering, because because there is a new
Now, then you take that instance of the lizard I told you. Car went through the lizard, killed it, he didn't know about it, no taste. Once it was put into his mind, something arose. So all that is in our mind. And mind functions not according to what I want. It is chitta niyama. It is the universal way of function. It is there, actually the universal forces are there not to let you go. Trying to keep you as far as possible in samsara bound. That is why giving the sense pleasures, all these pleasures, they get involved, get indulged and keep on swimming and not get out of samsara. And it is only the development panya that Lord Buddha spoke about, insight into this wisdom, understand the causes and effects, and then why these are happening. That helps you to get yourself released from these bonds a little.
That's what I said, explain brain, but I want just to give a concept shortly and I will fix you. Yes. One is the open room, the seven room, and the moment. But the interesting point is to start with the third moment.
Yes.
And we can but we start with the third one.
Yes.
The other thing is about we can So, but it's about to reach the truth, but then it is to reach three aspects. So there are 12 insights into these four things. 12 insights. One is that, I say one, that the first number is of property, it's the first insight. Then he says the first mode is truth of suffering has to be understood.
Yes.
Right. Then he says the third insight is that you have to reflect on that you have understood. Like that, ten insights for each of the four modes. So that all together there are 12 insights.
He said Triparivatan Dvadisakaran. That's right. So he did not simply come and talk to you, he understood, he went through it, and then he reflected, looked back and examined, and then only after he was fully convinced, he spoke out.
Each one is very different, because he understood. Then in the second group, he knew that he has to be balanced.
Yes. That's right, yes.
And then he realized that he has to operate a balance.
Yes.
And in the third group, he said that you have to reflect on that there is a shape from his suffering.
Yeah.
So he said, I reflected on it, and then I finally realized that I understood the third. And the fourth group, he said, nobody more fast, so that he has developed something in the right, he has completely developed the
Triparvattam Dvarikakara is the Kalivad. Thank you very much for the contribution.
I'll ask.
Dr. Basil, now we are listening to you on the floor, and in the way we can understand this and positive solutions, we cannot solve our problems being feminist. That's why our brother gave us the family. It's only a single person who can solve our problems and doctors is the same. Now, feminist, you are entangled. You can entangle. And whatever you talk is scary. You cannot put in your practice. That is why Lord Buddha left the feminist. I will not say that all must be bachelors and spinsters, but there must be a certain solution. That is what Lord Buddha talked about. How can you solve your problems in the right way?
No.
Your family is a home. Why don't the Buddha house? Can the husband the house? All who started because they are married. See my daughter, only one is doctor, is a neighbor, both the daughters are doctor. Okay, why you take the husband? All the problems arise once you are family. No, that you are the Buddha. That's the family. And all the theories and advice that you are talking is to a single person. I do not doctor. Just to, it's a person who can solve it. We with this burden, it's irredeemable. We are talking and talking. This is family. Lord Buddha left everything and mentally and know how to live.
Thank you. I think you are absolutely correct. Only thing is we should at least, wherever possible, program our living to give you a little bit of freedom for your solitude, for you to think and contemplate. But I am very revolting about the present day living conditions, because from the moment we get up in the morning till people go to bed, they have to work to earn, to maintain their living. That is why I said we have all the facilities what the Buddha said for the 40 years, but no around. We have no time, we are prevented from practicing, we are prevented from meditating, we are prevented from contemplating and understanding through social conditions. Now for anything to happen, one factor is your willingness, the other thing is the conditions must support it. Now we have all the Dhamma, we have all the teachings of the Buddha, conditions are not favorable to us. So we will pray that we will have better conditions, we will be born in better places where we have greater freedom to contemplate, understand and get rid of all these bondages.
That is lovely, my way of presentation. I'm very sorry that we have confined, I think, this topic.
All of us have been aimed at the command of the Mars. Suffering, the force of suffering, cessation of suffering, and path leads to the cessation of suffering. Now, I would like to draw your attention to second. Now, according to Navadata about the source of suffering, the force is Tanna. Now, there are three main departments. Three, hatred, love, hate, move. Now, there are things. Now, on one hand, Nibbana has been defined as eradication of three main kinds.
Right.
Now, in Dhammapavatana, Buddha has shown only the great Dhamma as the main cause for the dukkha. Now, why is he mentioning about hatred and ignorance?
Why didn't he mention?
Yes, he gave a mention only the Dhamma.
Now, he was not talking to you, Lord Buddha. He was talking to his colleagues who were almost at his level. So he need not go into such details. Moment he said this, they got it. So there were some Brahmins who went to Lord Buddha and spoke to him, and in one or two words, then got enlightened. So, but in other areas of his teaching, he talks of these three. So we are very fortunate that what Lord Buddha spoke
for 45 years.
go through them right now in one day, one sitting. So we are gifted with all that. So we are in probably a better state than the time of Lord Buddha in learning Dhamma. And why, with all these facilities, why don't we have the full-fledged around?
Mic. This is the mic.
Now, we are talking about happiness. I think before we start reading happiness, we have to know the understanding what we believe. I think basically what we are made to understand are suffering most of it physical and the other is materials. And from an idealist point of view, no relevant what suffering is. Then we can arrive at the making as what happiness. And I think most people see that when they start talking about happiness, I think most materials. But I think the theology is something more detailed. So, I have done the reading of Buddhism, but still they have not been able to grasp what do trace all the world. And I think, like most philosophy, when you start talking about words, it must be very clear as to what we are doing. And I thought that we come something more when you mention about the new place, that's why we are expected very more and
Right, thank you. I was trying to tell you to sort of relieve you from the belief that I am the contributor for dukkha. I was trying to gradually take you away from the feeling of guilt that it is not my fault. My input is very little, the rest of the input is outside. And finally, when you come to the bottom of it and understand cause and effect, you can relieve yourself entirely with the full understanding of nonsense. Everything is caused by cause and effect. It is very, very difficult for us to get to that point.
Yes, the basic term, the answer is something more than, just it means something to do with science, as he mentioned, it can be unfixed, it can be one, it can be more because of the service, because of things in the class, and because of this, it can be always suffering because
any factors.
Because there is a human
Now, when you take that instance of the lizard I told you, Car went through the lizard, killed it, he didn't know about it, no change. Once it was put into his mind, something arose. So all that is in our mind. And mind functions not according to what I want. It is chitta niyama. It is the universal way of function. It is there to actually the universal forces are there not to let you go. Trying to keep you as far as possible in samsara bound. That is why giving the sense pleasures, all these pleasures, say, get involved, get indulged and keep on swimming and not get out of samsara. And it is only the development panya that Lord Buddha spoke about, insight into this wisdom, understand the causes and effects, and then why these are happening. That helps you to get yourself released from these bonds.
But I want to just say about something that struck me when I read this too.
Yeah.
One is the noble truth, the second noble truth, third noble truth. at the fourth level. But the interesting point is that it starts at the first level.
Oh, yes.
And you definitely go down and down, but it starts with the fourth one.
Yes.
And then the other thing is about participating that you, as a people,
To his advanced people.
So, but it says about each truth, but that it is really three aspects. So there are 12 insights into these four truths.
12
insights. One is that, I think one must come that the first movement is part of the eight suffering, the first insight. Then he says that the truth of suffering has to be understood.
Yes.
Right. Then he says the third insight is that you have to reflect on that you have understood. Like that, ten insights for each of the four noble truths. So that altogether there are 12 insights.
He said Triparivartan Dvadisakaran. That's right. So he said he did not simply come and talk to you. He understood, he went through it, and then he reflected, looked back and examined, and then only after he was fully convinced, he spoke out.
He understood. Then in the second truth, he knew that he has to be abandoned.
Yes. That's right, yes.
And then he realized that he has already abandoned.
Yeah.
And in the third truth, he said that you have to reflect on that he has to escape from this suffering.
Yeah.
So he said, I reflected on it, and then I finally realized that I had understood the third truth. And the fourth truth, he says you have to give away. And we have nobody more fast, so that he has given us something in the right that he has completely given us. Right.
Triparivartan Dvadisakaran is the Pali word. Thank you very much for the contribution.
Now we are using you on form, and in the way we can understand this and positive reason. We cannot solve our problems being family. That's why our brother gave us the family. It's only a single person who can solve our problems and talk to things. Now, family, we are entangled. It's an entanglement. And whatever you talk here, you cannot put into practice. That was also the family. I won't say that all of the bachelors and spinsters, but there must be a certain solution. That is what we want to talk about. How can you find your problems in the right place?
No.
Your family is a home. Why don't you put up a house? Can the husband put up a house? All who start because they are married. See my doctor, only one doctor is the neighbor, both the doctor is the doctor. Why you take the answer? All the problems arise once you are family. No, that you are the problem. That's the family. And all hearing and explaining that you are talking is to the human person. I am now doctor. Just to, I will it's a person can solve it. We receive burden. It is irredeemable. You are talking and talking to listen. This is family. You are to the everything is mentally and so how to live.
Thank you. I think you are absolutely correct. Only thing is we should at least, wherever possible, program our living to give you a little bit of freedom for your solitude, for you to think and contemplate. But I am very annoyed about revolting about the present day living conditions, because from the moment we get up in the morning till people go to bed, they have to work to earn to maintain their living. That is why I said we have all the facilities what the Buddha said, no arahant. We have no time, we are prevented from practicing, we are prevented from meditating, we are prevented from contemplating and understanding through social conditions. Now for anything to happen, one factor is your willingness, the other thing is the conditions must support it. Now we have all the Dhammas, we have all the teachings of the Buddha, conditions are not favorable to us. So we will pray that we will have better conditions, we will be born in better places, where we have greater freedom to contemplate, understand and